Mr. HP Singh, Chairman and MD of Satin Credit Network, is joining us today from New Delhi. Satin Credit right now is doing very well. In fact, the entire space is doing very well and there are tailwinds there. Mr. Singh, afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. First of all, just want to understand from you about how much do you see this momentum which your sector and your company, of course, is witnessing last few quarters. Do you see this as a prolonged one for a couple of more quarters?
See, what has happened is the last 2 years of the pandemic, because of lockdowns and everything, have been very subdued, Now, that whole momentum for the last 2 years, including the demands which came in after that for about a year, signifies that I think, there is a very solid positive change which is happening across in terms of the environment, which is looking at credit facilities for these bottom of the pyramid borrowers. What I can probably foresee with the advent of economic activity picking up in the rural space, including the agri and agri-allied services probably doing very well in terms of the monsoons, which has not been the El Nino effect, which has been talked about. My own sense is since the economic activity and the income levels will be able to generate a lot of GDP and income levels for this pent-up demand will probably be there at least for about a few more quarters, going forward across over there. I cannot predict post, March 24, but till March 24, I can see it for sure that there is going to be an increased demand for finance loans through our borrowers.
3-4 quarters, you have good visibility. But Singh, also want to understand, I know the category of borrowers which you cater to are not very sensitive to interest rates, right? The idea is to avail credit in the first place. But still, for you as an operating company, if interest rates indeed start the downward trajectory in the next few quarters, it will aid your margins, wouldn't it?
I think what happens is technically, I think, we will probably be able to absorb some of it basically, and some of them is passed on to our borrowers, because it is very important that is the bottom of the pyramid and the economic activity which is done in the rural space. Technically, also has the advantage of any downturn which happens in the rates which are there. So what happens typically if there is a 1% downward trend, about 50% is absorbed by the company and 50% is actually passed on to the borrowers as well. So definitely win-win for both the institution as well as for the ultimate borrower.
Right, Mr. Singh, this is Vinny joining in the conversation as well. A very good afternoon to you. And, I just now want to start just talking about a bit about your company. Now, several banks have actually reported a good credit growth in the Q1 update, which is generally somewhat a seasonally weak quarter. So what is the kind of growth that we could be expecting from the company? Similar or above the levels of Q4 is what your expectation would be, or what should we expect?
See, again, if you look at a typical MFI institution as such, the Q4 is always the highest as this thing, But having said that, we've given a guidance for this whole year of a 25% plus growth. And we are on target even in the first quarter to probably achieve that milestone, which has been guided by us. And as I said earlier, basically, because of the reasons of the pent-up demand and the economic activity picking up, I think the quarters coming after this will also be very, very positive.
Right. Also, just want to understand in terms of obviously the recent announcement that the board has approved raising 500 crores via NCDs. Where would that fund be utilized for growth capital perhaps? And is that something substantial amount compared to your current AUM? Do you have any plans to raise more capital for the rest of the year? Any indication on that as well?
So typically we raise throughout the year, so this is an NCD of about 5,000 crore, which is probably being done by the board, which is going to be there. What happens is last year we raised close to about 5,000 odd crores, even last year in terms of our growth, for the growth capital as well as for giving debt to our borrowers. We need to do that also looking at our growth, which is going to happen across over there. So this is fundraising based on that, lenders of PSU banks as well as other, financial institutions which would be there. For us, capital is pretty sufficient for us, but we are always open look at further more capital raise for us to do that to fund our growth. In fact, we are sitting at a capital adequacy of about 26.5%. But if we get like-minded investors to probably look ahead, we can always look at raising further capital to fund our growth.
Okay, what about growth? What are the initiatives you are taking for growth, going deeper into regions you're already operating in, or maybe eyeing new geographies?
Hybrid of both, so we are increasing our branch penetration network also. That is one which we are doing. So we are diversifying into various other districts where we are not present right now. Along with that, we are also taking a deep dive into the existing geographies which are there to bolster the 25% growth guidance which we have already given.
What about your hiring plans? Are you getting, because you're a feet on ground as well, right? And we understand that talent and the right workforce is also a big issue in the industry because, of course, of high demand. Are you hiring, increasing your workforce?
I think it all depends on how you train your people and what is the growth path which we actually show them. So we typically have a very strong growth path for anybody who joins in as a loan officer. So typically it's a loan officer who reaches a branch manager, then maybe a territory manager. So that growth path which we actually signify for any new incumbent to come in, I think that's a very solid path which they look at in terms of getting more numbers in terms of feet on street. So there is a lot of training programs also which happen. There's also a kind of a passion which people would like to work on the rural space. I think all put together, I think we don't have too much of deficiency in terms of our recruitments which are there.
Okay, Mr. Singh, thank you so much for joining in with us and giving us your time this afternoon on ET Now.